All right. One up. Here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are welcoming you to episode number 3 of the Matthew Stone Street podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Stone Street, of course. I'm coming to you live. So I talked to my students today at school, and they said that it would be good to add a video portion to the podcast. So that being said, we're coming to you live from the office of Matthew Stone Street at Stone Street Manor. Obviously, video quality will have to improve in the coming weeks. We'll looking to invest some time in the. We'll have some investment in our cameras, but until then, we're going to roll with it. Now, today we're talking about coaching. Talk a little bit about my journey into coaching. It's what I went to school for. But let's start out right off the jump. Sorry about the glare. Nothing I can do about it. So we're moving on. Let's talk about championship game. This took place a couple weeks ago. It was John Adams Middle School, the team that I coach, assistant coach, versus South Charleston Middle School. Pretty electric atmosphere. And I haven't really commented on this too much. I really haven't even spoken to CJ Tawney, the head coach, but we're going to have him on the podcast the next couple days. I know Kanaka's on spring break, so that's good for them. We are going to give you my perspective of things that transpired that night. So, this was a night where everything seemed really dialed in. I'll give CJ all the credit in the world as the head coach. He had a game plan, and that was that was the plan that we stuck with, and it was a great game plan. I mean, he coached his butt off that night, and I'm the assistant, so at this point, this is how we like to do things at John Adams. I run um, kind of in between the other assistant, Rick, and CJ. I'm kind of throwing ideas out to CJ. Hey, might want to think about this, might want to think about that. Take a time out here, take a time out there. Um, and Rick is kind of the voice on the bench. So we try to work interconnectedly in order to produce the result that we want, obviously to win. So that's kind of the situation. Um, from my perspective, we went out with a really good game plan, and we started out trying to hit the ground running with different press, the press that we run. Not going to go into details about that, but and we kind of got shot. We kind of got hit in the mouth pretty early, and then after a little while, CJ made the decision to switch to zone, and it proved to be very successful. We fought our way back into it, and he took some timeouts, and we had a game. I mean, taking inside the locker room, he had it all written up of all their out of bounds plays that he scouted, and him and Rick scouted, and really had a good game plan for the kids going into it. So you got to give CJ a ton of credit to take to go through that, and you know it was a basketball game. It was a basketball game. We really the kids got dialed in. Mistakes were made, but it wasn't. We were all kind of on the same page, and you go through that roller coaster, and everyone goes through that roller coaster. Parents go through the roller coaster, the players go through the roller coaster, and we as coaches go through the roller coaster. And at some point in the game, you as a coach, you're kind of along for the ride, and you get a group in there. So me and Rick, our job during the game is to kind of talk to the kids on the bench, make sure we're all on the same page, and then we wanted to make sure we found the right lineup that was gelling well and was giving us they were just playing really well. And as a coach, you want everybody to play, obviously, but you get into a certain situation, hey, you got to roll with the guys that are putting forth the most production, and that's part of the game of basketball, and it's part of middle school basketball. So it came down to we were up to at they took a timeout, I believe, and then they hit a shot and tied it up, or we tied it up, and then it went into overtime. Kind of went back and forth. We had the lead, timeout. They came down and they hit a shot, and they hit the good shot. I give South Charleston all the credit in the world. Just like last year, we came down to a very nail biting game. Came out on the losing end of that, and again, you got to give CJ a ton of credit for his game plan and his ability to get those kids to play at a certain level. So that's kind of the good thing of what CJ brings, and his ability to lead these guys. And I thought he coached a game, like a really good game. I can't put him over enough. And the kids played their butts off, and just came out on the losing end of it. That's why you play. It's sports. That's sports. It's going to happen. Nothing, nothing to hang your head on. Nothing to get too upset about. It is what it is, And those guys and CJ and everybody was real upset, but that's part of the game of basketball, you know. So that's kind of the hook for the game, the first part of this episode. We're gonna kind of cut this down a little bit. I kind of rambled on the last episode, but I've got notes here of things I want to talk about in terms of my coaching career, and we're going to go from there. I've had a couple people reaching out to me. I am live on my YouTube channel. Also going to load this onto Spotify this evening. I appreciate the people that have reached out to me. Really doing this kind of truly, really, truly just for fun, just to get out. And I've always enjoyed podcasts, like I said on the first episode, and I've recorded a couple episodes. I've had a couple guys I went to high school with reach out to me, and had another gentleman reach out to me, Mr. Garrettson, Matthew Garrettson, who I've interacted with. He was part of my first time entering the pro wrestling show, and at Cedar Grove, and so we'll have these folks on the podcast, and I appreciate people listening. And so here we go. So when I was a sophomore, I think I told this story on the first episode. I'm gonna tell it quickly again. I was really I grew up going to Hurricane football games, and in that era that I went, there's a big hill behind the football field, and that's where kids my age, elementary school age, and still kind of do, but they kind of can't now because the world's changed a little bit. But anyway, while the games were going on, kids my age, second, third, fourth grade, we go in the hill behind and play, tackle football, two-hand touch, whatever. And my grandpa, he said, I would go with my grandpa, and he said, Matthew, if you're going to sit and you're going to watch the game. I'm not paying for you to go up on the hill. Plus, he knew I was very injury prone, so I would be the one that they'd have to call the ambulance for. So, Dad always went to Hurricane games, and that was something we did. He sat on the 50-yard line, and we would sit there and we'd watch the games. And that's what I did growing up. And the older I got, I wanted to be involved, but I had a bad concussion when I was, I believe, in fifth grade, and I had a heart murmur when I was born. So my mother said that you're not playing football. She said, Matthew, there's no way I'm not. And she was like, the fact is you are injury prone. I've had a couple concussions, stitches, etc. So like I said, I'm no stranger to the ER. So my mother said, you're not playing football. She said that's not in the cards. And so then I made the decision, talked to my grandparents, my mother. I was a sophomore in high school. I wanted to be involved with the football team in some form or fashion. So I went to Coach May one day at lunch and asked him, Coach, can I be a manager for the football team? I think I was a freshman, so going in my sophomore year. And he said, sure. And we came up, I went up there and had a conversation with him, and it was over the summer. So at the time, this was 2007. There was no, now you have these flex days, and every sport has a certain amount of flex days that you can work with your athletes. But at the time, it was basically the month of June. And there was another manager, but he was working a part time job too. And so I came in and just kind of hit the ground running. And long story short, earned Coach May's respect because I was there early. I always set everything up, did whatever he asked me to do, did whatever the coaches asked me to do, and he knew that I really cared. So Coach May is a big reason why I became a coach. He was a big influence for me, and not just Coach. Coach May was kind of the father figure with my grandpa, as well as several other coaches at Hurricane. And another guy that was I was really close to was the head equipment manager, Will Burton. And Will kind of took me under his wing, and we buddied up, and he really, made a big impact on my life. And love Will and love Jennifer and love Zach to this day. So, but yeah, Coach May was a big mentor for me and really enjoyed it. Really found my group being involved with the football team. The football players all, showed me a great amount of respect. And I came in a lot over the summer and helped out with all the other stuff that coaches do, like mowing the grass and all that fun stuff, painting stuff, and was was doing that. And I talked about this on a other podcast I do. We in the summer 7-on-7 was a big thing. So I remember the first 7-on-7 I went to was in Montgomery, which is close to where I live currently, where Stone Street Manor is located. So I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed the camaraderie of being involved with the football team, the atmosphere of Friday nights. Couldn't Some of the best memories of my life. Matter of fact, when my grandpa passed away this past November, Coach May actually reached out to me, and it meant a lot to me that Coach. Yeah, I don't even call him. I'm been out of school. I don't know what is it. I graduated in 2010. So I've been out of school 16 years, and I still won't call Coach May by his first name. I still call him Coach, and that's how much respect I have for the guy. I think he's down in Florida. Be awesome if Coach May heard about this and wanted to be on the podcast and just kind of reminisce about the old days. Hopefully we have him. That'd be great. I know he's down there coaching in Florida right now. I know his sons are coaching too. I think Jordan's coaching. His oldest is coaching golf, and his middle son is coaching on the same team he is, football team. So that's kind of awesome. All right. So I went to college. I made the determination. I was enamored with this thing. And so I went to college to be a teacher and to be a coach. And in the time that I was going to college, I transitioned over to basketball. A friend of my grandpa, he took the Hurricane Middle School basketball job. He had heard that I liked to coach, and he was wondering if I wanted to coach basketball and help him out. And I was 19, 20, I think, at the time. So that being said, I was technically a graduate, so I had to go to the coaches class. So I was taking the coaches class while I was kind of around, but kind of transitioning. And I played basketball growing up. My two neighbors, both one of them won a state championship at Charleston Catholic, and the other one, I think, was a runner-up or something else. They were brothers, and so I was around basketball. Played Sports City U. Played whatever bitty ball they had down in Hurricane at the time, and then got in middle school and just kind of got burned out. And that's, you know, to this day, when I get burned out, I get burned out. So anyway, so coaching basketball, I kind of understood it and really enjoyed coaching it. A situation took place where that head coach decided that he was going to not coach anymore halfway through the year. And this is when I met the official assistant coach, Hilton Ingram. And Hilton, to this day is one of my close friends. And we're going to have Hilton on the podcast for sure because this past fall, Hilton Ingram won a state championship at Charleston Catholic High School for cross country. So we definitely want to have, Hilton Ingram on the podcast, state champion, and kind of highlight cross country, kind of highlight track. He also coaches track at Charleston Catholic. And so we'll see him at track meets. I'm coaching track from the school I work at. So I moved into basketball. I still was involved with football. I've been around it long enough. The coaches kind of trusted me to go down and help teach the basics with D Money. I talked about D Money, Derek Moore at the previous podcast, and me and him kind of were the freshman coaches for a season or two. And I graduated college, got my first teaching job. My first teaching job was quite a ways away from Hurricane, so I decided to, um, you know, and shortly after I graduated high school, Coach May resigned and decided to move to Florida to be closer to his family. That's great. And I was always close to Coach Taylor, Jeremy Taylor, because I would my senior year, I kind of hung around the wrestling team. And so me and Coach Taylor always had a close relationship too. He kind of looked out for me. And so I always appreciate Coach Taylor and the time. And he kept me around. And I was equipment manager, but I was also, he knew I wanted to coach. So he kind of got my feet wet with that. And he was one that sent me and D Money down to coach freshman for a couple years. But then, I was teaching and getting ready to move, and basketball was kind of the sport that I was kind of leaning into, because the following year after my first year coaching basketball, me and Hilton took over full time. And then at the time, so he was there full year, just me, him, and another guy. And then at the time, the way the system was set up, if a teacher, they repost the job every year. If a teacher applied, you automatically got bumped, because at the time neither one of us were teachers. I was still in college. He had another job. So so we didn't have a job. So he went to Riverside and he coached high school basketball at Riverside for a while. And then I ended up at Winfield and worked for a guy named John Thornton, who I'm still friends with on Facebook. He's a heck of a nice guy. And man, he has some good stories. And that leads me to kind of where I ended up currently. So, like I said, at the time, we're talking 2012-ish. The the summer was still June. You had those 3 weeks to kind of do whatever. And Mr. Coach Thornton, John Thornton, he was doing wanted to do some stuff away from it, because he was a teacher, and he'd come in for practice, and I was wanting to run practice. I was young and hungry and wanting to get into it and everything. So I ended up taking some kids to the summer league at GW, and that's where I first met John Testa. And me and John kind of buddied up. We played. I think our teams played each other. We coached against each other and just started talking or whatever. And so we organized our scrimmage game for the upcoming season. So in November, we went to John Adams. Coach John Testa was the head coach. I think he had just gotten the job. And so he was coaching there, and he had a good team. And after that year at Winfield, being young, I think I was in my early 20s. I wanted to be a head coach for nothing more than ego. Nothing more than ego. Most coaches around any profession have some form of ego. So at the time, I was gun ho to be a head coach. I ended up at Dunbar Middle School, so I made the transition not only from assistant to head coach, but transitioned from Putnam County to Kanawha County, which, the whole setup's a little bit different. You know, for example, in Putnam County, if the girls were playing at one school, they would play the JV and varsity every, 2 times a week. And if they were at that school, then the boys were at the, the opposite school playing. So that's how they did it. But in Kanawha County, you play 3 games twice a week, and it might be one game. One day you'll have boys JV, boys varsity, girls varsity, and then the next it'll be girls JV, girls varsity, boys varsity. Okay, so that was kind of a transition. I was young. I didn't know all the things that entailed being a head coach off of the floor, and made some mistakes. Really was immature, and kind of got burned out a little bit. And in the middle of that season, went to Elkview on a Saturday for a JV game, and that's where I first met CJ. CJ was the head coach at Elkview, and we kind of talked. We sat there and talked while kids were kind of coming in from their ride or whatever, and went through the whole song and dance and coached against each other, and then went on down the road. So then fast forward, I end up not. It doesn't work out at Dunbar. I get my first teaching job, and now I'm kind of not into it. And at the time, I don't remember how exactly it happened, but John Tester reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I know whatever. I heard that you're not going back to Dunbar. Is there any way you'd want to come up to John Adams?" And so I ended up going up there, and he really gave me an opportunity as the assistant coach, and it's been there ever since. So this was 11 years ago. 11 years ago, he brought me up and really changed how he taught me a lot about how to coach basketball. For example, we don't section things off in terms of, okay, we're stopping this and we're doing this. We're teaching multiple things at one time. We have multiple people moving at one time. Very few times in a practice the kids are standing still. Okay, they're always moving somewhere. There's always something going on, and he taught me a lot about coaching. And at first, when I first went up there, it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming because of the group that we had at first. These guys were so good and so interconnected, and they hung out together outside of school, inside of school, and they were a great group. And the way that practice was, how smooth the transitions were from drill to drill, it was amazing. And at first I was a little bit hesitant, and then the more I got comfortable, the more I became, and the great thing about John was John would ask my opinion. Hey, what do you think about this? And at first I was kind of agreed with whatever he said, and then finally uh he said, I didn't bring you up here just for you to agree with everything. Please, if you have to tell me if there's something that you want to change or whatever. So then after about within a year or so, it was I would say, hey, you might want to think about doing this, because this isn't, what you're doing is not working in terms of games. Like, he might want to play one style of defense, and I would suggest another style of defense. So that's what I mean by that. Okay. And yeah, it really opened my eyes into coaching and how to conduct things, not just in the game, but how we enter the facility, how we conduct ourselves in the bleachers, how we conduct ourselves after the game. He was very organized in that. And with me and John, we got to the championship, I believe, every year it was just me and him. And then close but no cigar. Close but no cigar. Close but no cigar. It was about 3 years, 2 or 3 years. Well, at the time, after 1 year, some things happened. I don't know. It's not my place to talk about it. But CJ became available, and we had become friends on Facebook and everything else. And he messaged me. I messaged him, and I said, "Hey, man, any chance you think you'd want to come up here to John Adams? I know that stuff happened." I remember we were up in Marietta, Ohio for a shootout in the summer of June 2016. And that's when the big flood happened out in the Elkview area. And that's when the tragedy took place and all that flooding and everything. So I remember reaching out to CJ and just being like, "Hey, if you need anything, let me know." And kind of left it at that. He went and he coached Elkview, and we coached, and I think we talked at when they played us and when we played them. Matter of fact, he had a really good JV team one year, and they were just pressing and beating Jesus out of everybody. And I think it was our little tournament we do during Martin Luther King weekend. I told John Testa, I said, "Watch this," because I was coaching JV at the time. And we sat in a zone. And so when you have a team that runs and presses and does all that fun stuff, when you can get them to slow down and play in a half court, what it did was we burned a lot of clock and we kind of kept the score low. And they ended up beating us, but we gave them the best, we gave them the best game, I think, that year that their JV team had. So I remember that vividly. I really wish he would have kept the film up. But so some things went down. CJ became available, and I reached out to him. This was a year after the flood situation, so I think it's 2017. This was around April or May, right before we were getting geared up for summer. And at the time, Test John would always take a group of his students out to Europe and do a tour. So I kind of ran the summer stuff by myself. It was kind of fun because I got to be in charge for a little while. But man, we were so happy when he came back. I'm not a head coach. I don't want to be a head coach. I look at things from a different lens than those guys that are head coaches. I just don't have the patience for it. So we we I reached out to CJ and I said, "Hey, any interest in coming up here, or you got anywhere else you want to coach, or do you even want to coach?" And kind of just left it at that. I remember I was living in my apartment at the time. He had messaged me, oh, sometime right around June, and he said, "Hey, is that coaching job still available? Asking for a friend." And I was like, "No." I said, "No, it's not available." I said, "We want you. We don't want." I didn't pick up. He was like, "No, I'm talking about me." So I got a hold of John. I said, "Hey, man," I said, "CJ wants to come up," and I said, "CJ's a good dude. He's not got a kid on the team. He doesn't have ulterior motives. This, that, and the other thing." And so John said, "Okay, let's give him a shot." And he's like, "We'll see how it goes." And it was kind of CJ was the missing piece to the puzzle. With CJ, I've yet to. So I coached football, basketball, done track for 3 years. Yes, I've coached track, even though I'm big. Um, Coached tennis for a year. I'm one of those guys as a teacher in the building. If the kids don't have a coach for a sport, you know, I'll coach the team just because I never want to see a kid not get to play a sport because a coach won't, somebody won't be the coach. So I did it for one year I was the coach at East Bank for volleyball. Even though I was going to make more money being the official, I said, okay, I'll do it for the kids. I'll be the volleyball coach. But so we brought CJ in, and it was like the missing piece to the puzzle. And at first, it was he was kind of like how I was when I first started. So I'd been in about 3 years by the time he came up. And so it worked out. John was the head coach, CJ was the volunteer coach, and then I was the JV coach slash assistant coach. And it kind of worked out because we all three knew our roles, and there was never a conversation that needed to be had between the three of us. You know, those two would sit in the office, and they would, and John had somebody he could bounce ideas off of, and I've always been the players guy. Like I liked going out, sitting in the locker room, shooting the breeze with the guys, and you know, talking to them and everything else. But then I was the one that during a game I wouldn't mind to tell John, "Hey, this is not, let's think about this instead of what of the, I wasn't afraid to say something to him, and it wasn't personal. We cleared me and John. We knew that going into every game that we might argue or whatever, but it's not personal. It's not. We're just trying to win the game, and at the end of the game, we would hug each other, and so we brought CJ in. And people won't believe that, but at the time, CJ was the calmest of the three of us. I would be I'd sit in the middle. I'd sit on the floor during a JV game, and I got a technical one time, and I was I would yell, and then John would yell, and CJ'd kind of be the calm one. But we all three worked really well. But things happen. I was one that I would get burned out real easily, and took a couple of breaks to step away for some personal reasons. And but that's kind of the story. And I can't, but I became back. You know, John moved moved on to greener pastures, and CJ became the head coach. And at the time, CJ also wanted to coach football again because he coached football at Elkview, and job came open. John Adams, and he's all in, and so we really had CJ come up there, and he's the football coach. He's won it the past 2 years. But in the midst of all this that's happened with the coaching situation, it's a chance that me and CJ really got to kind of bond together, and we would have conversations, and that's when and we're going to have him on in a couple days, and he doesn't like to talk about this kind of stuff or anything, but he became my best friend. Uh, Me and CJ we've been through some stuff together, on personal level. Uh, we've fought, and but we've always had each other's backs. And if anything were to go sideways with me, CJ's the guy I would lean to. And so all these we've shared a lot of laughs, and hopefully we're going to have some good stories, some good chemistry on the podcast. But we're going to bring CJ in, and we're going to talk football, we're going to talk basketball, we're going to swap stories and talk about some things. And people don't realize how funny CJ is because he's got that blank thing. But yeah, we've always had each other's backs, and we will always have each other's backs. That's one thing that's the one constant about me and him. So my philosophy when it comes to coaching, to wrap this episode up, and we'll bring episode number 4. I told you I was going to keep this one short. We definitely I want your feedback on this episode. My philosophy when it comes to coaching is ever evolving. I want to be in it for the kids. I don't have an ego. I don't have an ego. I wasn't an athlete. I'm here to help the kids. I know what I'm capable of. I know what I bring to the table at John Adams. I don't need anyone to tell me. I don't need anyone to say, "Oh, good job, Stoney." I don't need that. I don't seek that. I don't want that. It's not, and it's not personal. It's just how I am. You know, I know what I bring to the table, and I'm in it for the kids. I'm in it to help them win, and help them grow. I learned a lot of good lessons for my life by being involved in sports. And I take these times, you know, before games, before JV games, especially when, technically I run the show, although um, me and CJ and Rick, we all kind of work together. You know, what I always tell the guys is CJ's the voice on the floor. I'm the voice behind the scenes. Rick's the voice on the bench. So I don't take credit for anything because I didn't do anything. I've never scored a point for John Adams Middle School. I'm never going to score a point for John Adams Middle School. So it's not my team in terms of that. But I'm here to help the kids, and I always take the time during a JV game, especially, to find some type of life lesson that they can take away from it. You know, so we really got to give credit to. I'm going to give a shout out to Shy Ball and the guys that run that Shy Ball program, because I've, like I said, I've worked in different areas, and they do all stars and different areas, travel to different areas to play each other's all star teams, and they talk about Shy Ball all the time, how organized it is, how those guys bring a different attitude, a different vibe, a different type of organization that a lot of areas don't have. And so those guys do a great job. And we have a great program from Shy Ball to GW High School. And so we really appreciate those guys at the Shy Ball level. But yeah, my philosophy is we want to teach them life lessons. It's not always going to be about you. You're not always going to score all the points. Um, there's times when we go in at halftime and they might be losing. It's like, hey, life's going to kick in the pants. How do you respond? How do you respond? How do you take this chance to do what you need to do? You have kids that are having a bad game, and it's like, you got to keep working. You have to keep doing what you need to do. So we try to take these, I try to take these things to teach them about life lessons. And I think it works for them. I mean, we got former players that are working for Goldman Sachs and own businesses, and they've gone on, and I don't know if they're in their 20s thinking about John Adams Middle School, but we have a lot of guys come back from GW. Maybe they didn't play in high school, but they still come to support our program, and no fault. They just get in high school, and priorities change. They more invested in another sport, perhaps football, baseball, whatever, wrestling, but they always come back because they want to support the program, and we bring them in, and CJ has them talk to the younger guys, the guys that are in it, and talk about all the lessons they learned. And so that's where we are. We run a we run a good program at John Adams, and I'm happy to be there. Um, I like coaching. Currently coaching track, and like I said, we have a small team, but the kids that I have, they're very open. They're learning, and I'm learning while they're learning. Um, so that's my philosophy when it comes to coaching. That's going to be a lot of this episode, is the story of behind my coaching endeavors, and you never know what each what each year is gonna bring me. You never know what sport I'll coach next. I coached golf one year. Um, like I said, coach tennis. So I kind of help out where I can when I can, because, like I said, might not always give off the impression, but I really like to make sure the kids have an opportunity because Coach May always said this, you only get to do it, you only get one go around. You get one like chance to be young. And you don't want to be in your coach always said this, you don't want to be in your 20s or your 30s and say, man, I wish I'd have played my senior year. I wish I'd have blah, blah, blah. I wish I'd have done this. I'd have done that. And I remember Coach May when he said that. And I agree with that 100%. There's times I wish I'd have played high school basketball. There's times that, I wish I'd have tried to convince my mom to let me play football. I mean, but, I'm happy with what happened to me. I'm happy where I'm at. So that's it. That's the coaching episode. And next time, we will have another episode, possibly discussing either officiating or we will discuss CJ getting on the podcast, might take the show on the Rizzoed, and or we'll just talk about whatever I want to talk about. So we'll see. If you like it, please subscribe. Please let me know on Facebook or any other. Just let me know in person, whatever. And I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the people that have reached out to me. It's really cool. Like I said, this is just kind of a hobby I like to do. So until next time, Stone Street is out.